I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Nelson Mandela. I usually have one quote, but I'm going to go with a couple more. When everything seems to be going against you, remember that the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it. Henry Ford. Two more quotes. We learn most about ourselves when things go wrong. General Mattis. And last and not least, aviate, navigate, and communicate. My guest on this episode of Passing the Torch is a retired colonel who served in the Air Force for over 24 years as a fighter pilot and senior military leader. She has flown over 1,800 hours in the A-10 Warthog, including more than 100 combat missions protecting troops on the ground in both Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2003, she was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for heroism after successfully recovering her battle-damaged airplane after an intense close air support mission. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Air Force veteran, fighter pilot, SAT lover, someone who once ran shoeless during a 2-mile high school cross-country meet, jalapeno popcorn popper extraordinaire, 49ers fan. Passing the Torch with KC Campbell starts now. First and foremost, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Those are great tidbits from the bio that most people don't recall.
Because I've been following you for a while, and I read your book, which obviously drove me to reach out to you, and I was just enamored with it. But and just seeing you on multiple other podcasts. Ryan Hawk is a big podcast that I follow, and you were on there at least once, maybe even twice. And I know sometimes he'll have repeat guests. But it's always there's a notes app I keep on my phone, and I've had people ask me, how did you get this person or that person on my phone? Sometimes it's a 2 to 3 year process, and I'll listen to that person on countless podcasts, or I'll read their books or articles, and I'll just on the notes app on my phone, I'll just have random nuggets of information. So, and I'll try to compile that. But I don't know where I saw the jalapeno popcorn tidbit at, but I could smell it, right? There's a very distinct smell of that. But yeah, thank you again for being on my show.
It's a good quality of any fighter pilot. They got to know how to make jalapeno popcorn. So one of the basic skills we learn when we first join a fighter squadron.
Yeah, 101, right? It's
yeah,
QT
exactly.
Or OJT. Before we dive deeper, why is life great right now?
Life is great right now because I am now approaching, 4 years retirement from the Air Force, and my kids are almost 13 and 17, and I have been able to spend more time with them, be more involved in their lives, spend more time with my husband. It's just, I feel more relaxed, more recharged, just really enjoying this next chapter of life.
Now, I love that. So before we started recording, we talked about my experience right now, and I'm in that transition. So, and just hearing some of your thoughts and feedback is just very, very refreshing. As far as like the flow of the conversation, there's a lot of different topics. If we get to them, we do. If we don't, we don't. But so it might be some jumping around. But one thing that really struck me was, I don't know where I heard it, but I had a note on my phone that said you love talking about mistakes. So do you have like a favorite mistake of yours, a story that you like to share?
Yeah, the reason I like to talk about it is because I think sometimes people will read a bio about somebody, and of course, your bio is all the great things that you've done, all the, the accolades, but what's behind the bio is the struggles, the sacrifice, the mistakes that, well, maybe I'm just speak for me personally, that I made along the way, right? Like, yes, I achieved the rank of colonel in the Air Force. Yes, I was able to command and lead units, but behind that is like some, maybe not so great things that I did and struggles that I had. I mean, flying for me, I spent 20 years as an A-10 pilot, but the road to get there was rough. I mean, there were so many times I thought about quitting or thought that I wasn't good enough to do it because I was really struggling with air sickness was one of them, just a lot of roadblocks in the way. One of the mistakes that I look back on, and whether or not it's my favorite, it was probably one that I learned the most from, thankfully, early in my career. What I like about the mistake is the lessons that I learned. The mistake itself was early in my aviation career. It was the end of pilot training for me. But I was flying my final formation check ride, fly real close to another aircraft. You get evaluated on your position and how well you perform. And I'm sure I was nervous. And so as I'm flying this mission, tucked into this T-38 right next to me, the visor on my helmet starts to fog up. And probably because I'm breathing hard because I'm nervous. And it gets to the point where I'm like, this is not really safe. Like I probably need to like say something about this because I'm not really seeing the aircraft next to me very well. And I know I'm not really flying great. And I finally just say, to my evaluator pilot who's in the back seat, right? Safety monitor also. I explained to him what happens and he's just like, no big deal. I got the aircraft. He takes it. We move away. He's like, clean your visor out. I do like, this is really no impact for him. Like, he's really just like, thanks for letting me know. So I do that, I clean the visor out, but I get back into formation. I have the airplane and I am not focused on what I'm doing because I am worried about how I was flying in the past 30 seconds. I was worried that I wasn't in great position. And so what am I doing now? Well, I'm flying terrible because I'm thinking about the past, not what I'm doing and not in the moment. And it just kind of spiraled out of control. I just started to doubt myself and, already going, oh, well, you hooked this ride, you're not going to pass this one. And that kind of that negative self-talk just spiraling. And we landed and I knew it was not a good ride. I was just hoping in some chance that I passed and he walked in and, all the other rides leading up to this I had done fairly well. And he's like, Kim, that was a terrible ride. Like he kind of laughed. He was like, that was terrible. Like, you're better than that. Like, and he's like, he looked at me, he's like, you are going to make mistakes in your life. You have to be able to let them go. And I was just like, oh shit, you're right. Like, yes, that is exactly what I didn't do. Just this reality of you are going to make mistakes and you have to be able in the moment, you want to learn the lessons, but all the junk you carry with it, you got to let it go. And that's a lesson that I still struggle with, right? I still have to remind myself, let it go, move on, learn the lessons, but let it go.
So why is self-talk so important? Because you mentioned self-talk and, just now.
I think we can be really hard on ourselves. I mean, I know I was growing up, like I was really hard on myself and, I had all these lofty things in my life that I wanted to do and I didn't like making mistakes. I was, afraid of failing. And I just wish somebody would have kind of looked at me and go, hey, you are going to make mistakes on this journey. You are going to have failures. Like you have to be able to get back up. So I think in those moments, it's that self-talk of like, well, that sucked. But you have the ability to move on, and believing in yourself and like, okay, that ride was bad. This next one is I'm going to go kick ass. This is going to be my best ride that I've flown. And I think just being positive. I mean, I take it with me now. I still get nervous when I get on a stage and speak in front of people. But before I go on stage, I just tell myself like, relax, just be in the moment, tell the story, like just be there to connect with people. And I think just that little bit, it allows you to relax and really kind of gives you focus before you get into an airplane, walk on stage, walk into a briefing room, a negotiation, you name it.
Yeah. It sounds like just from like there's been a lot of reflection just since you retired from the Air Force. And then even you talked about just self-talk and learning from our mistakes. And, you wish you could go back in time and say this to your younger self.
Writing a book causes you to reflect, I think there are so many things in my life. I'm like, how did I get there? Why did that happen? Really asking those questions. And if nothing else, right? Like that was the one thing as I was writing that book, it really allowed me to go back and critique and reflect and learn and figure out why in some cases I was successful and why in other cases I was not so successful. Why were things failures, and kind of really digging in and thinking through those things. And I'm, fighter pilot, so I like a debrief. So it allowed me to do that.
Yeah. So you mentioned the book, and there was like a lot of references to your past. And one thing that really stood out to me was very early in the book, you discussed that fateful day, and I'm going way, way back to January 1986 with regard to the Challenger. How different do you think your life would have been had you not watched the events that unfolded that day? And then follow up to that, if you could go back in time right now, I like to say Quantum Leap because I love that TV show. If you could go back and quantum leap, talk to yourself in that moment. Again, like what would you say to yourself in that moment? And then separately, how do you think differently your life would have been had you not watched the events on that day?
So crazy to me. Like part of me says, what person in their right mind would see something like like a fatal launch of a space shuttle and think, oh, that's what I want to go do.
Yeah.
And I still think I still struggle with that. Like, what made me want to do that? But I think, again, reflecting and looking back, one, I realize I'm not alone. There are so many people that I've talked to that say that that one moment invigorated them to be an engineer or a pilot or an astronaut. And I think for me, watching it, I felt like this devastation. And I was like, this is crazy. I don't know these astronauts, but I was, just devastated by it. But I also realized, like, they died doing something that they believed in, something that was big and important and more important than themselves. And I don't know where I would be. That's a crazy like thought of like, it was such a turning point for me in my life. And it gave me motivation. It gave me drive because in that moment I decided that's what I want to go do. I had this goal someday to go on to become an astronaut.
Yeah.
Granted, things change over time.
Yeah.
We can get there later, but the reality was in that moment, it shifted everything for me. And I see it with my kids. I see it as kind of like when they find passion and motivation, wow, it's a hell of a lot easier to get them to do their homework or to work out or whatever it is because they found something. It's crazy to think like, tell that little girl age 10, right? Hey, like if I'm trying to think, well, you may not be an astronaut, but you're going to love the journey. And maybe that's it, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
that's it, is enjoy the journey, because sometimes we have these lofty goals and we forget to enjoy along the way. And, thankfully at some point in my career, I was always driving for this to be an astronaut. And I realized how much I love flying the A-10 and I didn't want to give that up. And, also I had a partner in life, my husband, and I just realized that it wasn't really going to work for us and family, and things changed. And so maybe that's what I would say. It's just, hey, these are lofty goals. These are bold, audacious goals. And that's awesome, but enjoy the journey and don't be
Yeah.
hard on yourself.
No, that's thanks for sharing that. It's just something that really just stuck with me, and I can remember being in first or second grade, a couple years after that, and just reading about it like in school, and I'm thinking like, man, that's
Yeah.
but and then I also follow Johnny Kim, astronaut, and he's been posting on social media like some of the training, the simulators they have to do, and I'm like, you have to be a little bit crazy to like volunteer for that stuff.
Yeah, probably a little bit.
Yeah. You talked a lot about a journey. I just want to kind of shift around here. Please discuss the impact that Chief Master Sergeant Lisa Robinson had on your life.
Yeah, that was so early, right? That was at my time at the Air Force Academy. And as cadets, really back then, and I was there from 93 to 97, we didn't have a lot of interaction with the enlisted corps. We do now, like, right,
Yeah.
we've changed that. We recognize that's important.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was really only if you were in a leadership position that you got the opportunity to interact. And Chief Robinson, wow, she was just, she really set the example for me just in terms of, being a woman and being in this, being a chief, being in a leadership role. But she really mentored me, and really like just took the time to talk, talk through some things with me that I had never been able to talk to other people about, just in terms of leadership and leading, and the challenge of, being
Yeah.
at the academy and leading your peers is, I can't even imagine doing it now with social media. But, I think having somebody like that in my life who cared about me as a person, but also as a developing leader, as kind of the future of, someday, right? All these cadets are our future
Yeah.
leaders in the Air Force and Space Force. And she just took that and ran with it and really pushed us and challenged us and had difficult conversations with us and really got us thinking. And so I think for me, seeing that early on is just a reminder of how important that is. So even as, as you grow on your own journey, like, okay, what about the people coming behind you? And just taking the time to connect with people and talk with them has been really important to me, on my journey as well.
Thanks for giving just the enlisted the shout out and just acknowledging like how important and vital that respective tier is. Actually leads into like another topic I wanted to get to, and I want to do a time jump, and something you're probably sick of talking about, but I'm gonna put a little bit of different spin on it. Let's do a time jump to April 2003, but after you landed.
Yeah.
What comes to mind when I say Staff Sergeant? And I hope I'm getting the last names right, and I tried to get them right, but what comes to mind when I say the name Staff Sergeant Ian Moraes and Senior Airman Randy? Is it Andrews?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I get those right?
Yes, you did.
Perfect.
Ian Morris and or Randy Andrus. Yeah, they were my crew chiefs that day, which,
Yeah.
we don't always have the same crew chiefs, right? I mean, it would be awesome if we always had our plane and our crew chiefs. It just doesn't always work out that way. But I was lucky enough for them to be my crew chiefs that day. And so Randy launched me out that morning, and just always super professional, but he was the one that was like, super fired up. We're always, trying to get fired up before we go take off and do a combat mission. And he was like, ma'am, you bring that airplane back with nothing on it, which meant he wanted me to go drop all the weapons, take care of our troops on the ground.
Yeah.
I brought it back with nothing on it, in a very different way. And then Ian was there waiting for me when I got back. And the reality is there are people behind the scenes who ensure our success in life. And these two were them, and there's so many more, right? All the back shop people, the people that wired the system and the A-10 and its emergency backup system. But like, you don't plan to take off on a mission and go hit with a surface to air missile, lose all your hydraulics, and then struggle to make it home. Like, that's like a distant thought that's like, oh yeah, we brief it, we talk about that contingency, but we're kind of like, that'll never happen to us. And so when it does happen, it's that moment of, you hope everything has been done to ensure your success. And that is exactly what my crew chiefs did. I mean, that airplane could fly under tremendous stress, tremendous battle damage. I mean, everything worked exactly as advertised, exactly like it was supposed to. So, I just owe a lot to those two guys, and it's been a pleasure kind of keeping in touch with them over the years.
Yeah.
Senior Airman Randy Andrus went on to be Senior Master Sergeant. It's just kind of fun to see that transition. And but yeah, it's just a reminder. And a lot of what I talk about now is, just in terms of who are the people behind the scenes that ensure your success, and do you take the time to thank them? Do you take the time to, understand that it's a team, right? It's a team that makes these things happen. And our crew chiefs often don't get the credit. So those two, I obviously have a tremendous amount of respect for.
So, I mean, actually, so why were they the first people that you wanted to see after you landed?
Well, it was their airplane, and
Yeah.
I did a little damage to it. So, I just kind of felt like I don't know. It was just, the wing commander met me at the jet on the runway because I couldn't taxi the airplane in. It had enough damage, leaking hydraulic fluid, and had caught on fire and just holes everywhere. So he met me at the jet and was kind of like, where do you want to go? And I just felt like it was the logical place to go, right? When we finish a mission, we go taxi into our parking spot. And I couldn't taxi the airplane there. So I was like, well, I guess, can you give me a ride? And then I guess I should probably go apologize to them for bringing their jet back in this condition. Like, yeah, I emergency jettisoned everything off the airplane because I couldn't climb, so everything's gone. But I don't think that's what he had in mind. So it's just I don't know, closure to the mission, closure to say thank you. And here I was thinking I needed to apologize. And I remember hopping out of the car, not airplane, but hopping out of the car, and Ian's there, and he's got this like huge smile on his face, right? He's like, ma'am, it's so good to see you. Welcome home. And I'm just like, man, I didn't have to say anything at all. Like, it just, the whole idea of like that team concept of everybody coming together to ensure mission success.
I don't know what it is about the A-10, but it is like the people's aircraft. There's always going to be these shiny new objects, but it's Old Faithful, and there's just a great affinity for.
There's a lot of love for an airplane that maybe the Air Force doesn't love as much, which is okay. Like, I get it. But you know what? We're really confident in what we do, and we know we do a job well. And I think we're not sleek, we're not sexy, we're not your latest and greatest fighter, but the reality is we do a job and we do it well. So I think there's a lot of love for it on the pilot side, right? It keeps us safe. But I also think, the ground troops and those who have been on the receiving end in terms of like friendly support, really understand what it can bring to the fight. So I'd love to see it stick around a lot longer, but
I think many people would.
Yeah.
This is unrelated. Like, I had some jalapeno like spread on my bagel before this, and it's now starting to make my eyes like water. So if it seems like I'm crying, I'm not crying. It's just my eyes are getting teary-eyed.
That's funny when you walk into a fighter squadron and somebody's made jalapeno corn and it's really strong.
Yeah,
same.
It's jalapeno cream cheese is what I had.
You're like eyes watering. Yeah. So
your story's very emotional, but it's not making me cry.
It's all in the theme of things here. So
yeah, we'll pretend like it's all because of the story, but with regard to obviously the flight, from that moment on, how did your courage change the trajectory of your life
You
and
know,
those you lead?
yeah, I really feel like that moment, I don't know, I'm a believer, things happen for a reason, and that moment was so life-defining, life-changing for me in so many ways, and I think, I on the way home, I just remember thinking like, I may not survive this. I may not come out standing on the other end of this, right? I didn't really
Yeah.
know what the outcome would be, and I think when you're faced with something like that, I realized, I just gotten married. Like there was all these things I wanted to do in my life. I hadn't had kids yet. It just really makes you think about your priorities. Um, and it also taught me that I was capable of doing more than I ever thought I was. Like if you had told me like this is going to happen, you're going to get hit with a missile, flying a close air support mission over downtown Baghdad, you're going to end up in manual reversion, you're going to have multiple systems lost on your airplane. Like I probably would have been like, no, I don't think I could ever do something like that and then land the airplane. Like it taught me that I can do hard things, right? Things that I think maybe I'm not capable of doing. And so it really gave me just this idea of like the courage part is the reality, the more so the reality of listening to the mission back and realizing how scared I was in the moment, but still being able to do it, right? Like it wasn't like,
Yeah.
we had trained for things like this, but in the moment, yeah, there was fear. I didn't think about it at the time, but I can hear it in my voice and the audio. And I just realized that like you can be afraid in your life to do things. It is all about what you do in that moment. It's like what you do with the fear. I think about so many different instances throughout my career. I've had the opportunity to reflect, but I even think like taking command for the first time, like I was super excited, but I was also really nervous. Like you want to do well, you want to live up to expectations. And so it's that kind of courage of it's okay to feel nervous. It's okay to feel doubt. It's okay to feel worry as long as you can do something with it. And I
Yeah.
think that's just the reminder throughout my life when I start feeling that doubt and fear, like pretty normal, turns out. But you got to be able to do something with it. You got to be able to take action, even when you feel that fear, that doubt, the worry.
I was actually gonna ask you a question, like, what would your advice if someone just stopped you in the hallway and said, "Hey, what's your advice to someone who lets a no or fear control their life?" Would you have a different message, or is that pretty much the same? I guess everything you just said.
I think sometimes again we can be really hard on ourselves and we
Yeah.
we think that we're like the only one that has these doubts or like that is afraid. And I guess my real piece of advice would be like, okay, but what's on the other side of that? Like, right? If you say no, you miss out on the opportunity, but like what does that open for you if you do say yes, if you do take that leap? And sometimes it's just take one small step in that right direction. Like you don't have to have like conquer that big audacious goal all at once, just small steps. Like that helps gives you courage to do that. But it doesn't come without a whole lot of hard work, like
Yeah.
I guess, there's lots of advice, I suppose. I think the other piece is you got to do the work. Like sometimes the more work you do, the more preparation you have, can help you get over that fear because you're like, oh, I've got this. I've put in the work. I know I can deal with this. But there's a limit. Like at some point, you got to take that leap. You can't hold yourself back forever saying, well, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. Like at some point, there's a balance here, right? Like put in the
Yeah.
work. But at some point, you got to take that leap of faith, take that small step, whatever it is to move in that direction.
So Michelle Mace Kern was on my podcast, and I'll be releasing that episode a week from today. Of course, I don't. Anyway, she talks about making those small, bold choices,
Yeah.
and of course, when you stack those, it can lead to something bigger. Speaking of fear, was it your squadron when you said you were feared, scared of taking command? Was it your squadron or group command time when you brought your son up on stage? Was
That
that
that was my squadron command. And I did not bring him up on stage. He chose to do that
how
alone.
how old? And was this the oldest?
It is my oldest. So he's 17 now and he was 3 at the time.
Yeah, yeah,
And this was like, there weren't many women around in command positions in the fighter units. And um, I really put a lot of pressure on myself in terms of what I thought a good leader should be, tough and strong and all of these things and have this presence. And And then in the middle of that change of command ceremony, my son's like, yeah, well, screw all of that. I'm coming to
Yeah.
sit on your lap because that's where I would prefer to be. And it just kind of like, I don't know. It's amazing the things kids can teach you. But in like that one moment of having my son in my lap, he was just, it taught me, well, so much for tough and strong. And maybe it is like, I look at it a little differently now. But in the moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is my team thinking of me? Like, clearly not proper military protocol to have your kids sitting on your lap. And I was just so worried about what people were thinking. And the reality is like that one moment actually brought my team closer to me because it made me human, right?
Humanized, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, oh, she has those same issues that we do, right? Like there's no belief at all here that I'm perfect, right? Like I have my own challenges. And I just remember the next day kind of just walking around and I was still nervous of like what everybody was thinking about it. But the reality was like my young airmen, like they taught me that lesson. They were the one that were like, man, that was so awesome. Like totally makes you human. It allowed me to open up with them and kind of gain trust in a way that I think wouldn't have happened otherwise. And so it's just, I look back again, things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
Terrifying to think of something like, and I mean, I get it. Like my son he was adorable. It was super cute. Right. But I'm still like, oh, what are people going to think? Here's this mom, great, who is supposed to take command of us and clearly can't even control her 3-year-old. But right, we're human. We're all human. And I think that's what allows us to create connection and build trust. And that then allows us to do so much more with our team when we have that trust and connection.
Exactly. And this is a couple years, obviously, after, the events in, April 7th or whatever. Yeah. Right. So it's just kind of like where you're known as like this, this badass, this hero, killer chick. And then it's like, oh man, like, she's so prestigious. And it's like, oh, there's this human aspect. Like her son doesn't have, fruit snacks and he's throwing a tantrum. Right. And, so yeah, I get
Which
it.
Which is probably what we were going to get to if my husband tried to get up and be like, hey, come sit down.
Yeah. I do want to transition to some lighter topics and just kind of go to some miscellaneous questions. There's no rhyme or reason, just some fun questions. But one is I want to ask about your kids. Do they? Because you have 2 teenage boys, right?
I do, yeah.
Do they think you're cool?
I don't know that any teenage boys think their mom is cool.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. I didn't really tell. I don't know. I didn't really tell my kids about this. Like I didn't really happened well before they were born and it never really came up. And then I think my older son at one point, when they were using computers in school, Googled my name and was like, Mom, did this happen? And so having these conversations.
Mom, there's a pilot named Kim Campbell who did the same name as you. Like
happened over Baghdad. And I was like,
she flew A-10s. Do you know her? Like, what a coincidence.
And then my younger son, I actually brought him with me to go when I was doing a speaking event in California. We didn't have daycare, childcare. So I just was like, well, I'll bring him with me. And he heard me speak. And I think that was a little different. Like he was like, oh, like he had a lot better understanding of what I do and why I do it. And, they're teenagers, right? But after that keynote, everybody's, clapping. It's the end of the keynote. And he runs up from the back of the room to give me a hug. And I was like, okay, maybe for this one moment I am cool. But, the reality is I'm still mom. I still make them clean the rooms and do all those things they don't want to do. So
if you're still bruh.
No, bruh. Yeah, bruh.
Mom, you're so lame.
Yeah. What world have we come to?
No, that's cool. If you were to give a TED Talk on something for what you are not known for, what would it be?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I've thought a little bit about this. But, I think whether there's a lot in the book, right? So it's hard to say, like, I share a lot and some of that is more known and lesser known. But I think the one thing that I think about a lot is with my husband and our ability, what you want to call it, work-life balance, but just how we found success in our personal life and our professional life. Mm-hmm. And success is defined by us. So other people may not think it's successful, but again, it's about writing your own story and choosing your own path. And I think sometimes society, our mentors even can tell us what they think we should do or how we will be successful. And And while that is appreciated sometimes, the reality is I think we all have to make decisions based on our own life and our own environment.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a little bit of story to there and more to share about that. But yeah, I don't know if there's a TED Talk in the future, but that's something I've been thinking about, especially as people ask about a second book and you try to think about like what it is that, what would connect with people, what would make a difference for people. And that's one I feel like we do a lot of mentoring on that topic. And so maybe that's something that people are really interested in or would be willing to know or want to know more about.
Yeah. No, for sure. Thanks. That's really good. I appreciate that. Something else I want to know more about is if you can meet one 49ers player, past or present, who would it be?
Oh gosh. One?
Is that right? Are you a 49ers fan? Did I
I
get
am.
that
I'm
right?
totally a 49ers
Okay.
fan. Yeah.
I thought
I would have to go with Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice, Joe Montana. Can I
yeah,
combine them?
I'll allow it because yeah, you can't. And yeah, it's. I
It's hard
think it'd be.
to have one without the other. But I
Yeah.
have to say, like, I'm super impressed with Brock Purdy. It's nothing like being the last man in the draft and then like stepping up and when it counts. So
I hope this sounds as a compliment about him, but maybe he's like the A-10 of quarterbacks, right? He's
yeah, like people kind of question your ability and your doubt, but then when it matters, you show up and do the job. Yeah.
Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, I'll allow it, right? And it's you have to. I mean, it's how could you not?
Yeah.
And, you grew up where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the Bay Area, so
okay,
I grew up in San Jose. Yeah,
especially like in the in the 80s. I mean, really, it's just the height of that stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I want to do a name game, so I'm just going to say some names. So just one or two words that come to mind when you hear the person's name. Some of the names I hope I get right, so please forgive me for those if they listen. I tried to Google it and find it, but I couldn't find anything, so I'll give it my best shot.
Right.
I even did like AI and it said pronounce these names for me, and it was different answers every time. So I was like, here we go. Carol Teviga.
Carol Tevaba. She was my first. She was my my pilot instructor when I soloed. So back in the day, those are more than one word. So
that's fine.
What I remember about her was her cutting the back of my shirt, cutting the tail off the shirt when you solo and hanging it on the flight school at San Jose International Airport. Super cool experience.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Major Donna SCH. Yeah, say it again, please.
Donna Schutzius. Yeah, she was. She commissioned me, so she was my commissioning officer at the Air Force Academy. She taught what at the time was military arts and science, and she was about 9 months pregnant when she did it, which was pretty awesome. We had to have a backup plan in case she went into labor. What's really cool is that she showed up for my retirement. We had lost touch over the years, and thanks to social media, I found her again, and she showed up at my retirement, which was just fun to see life come full circle.
Full circles. Man, she pinned on your lieutenant bars, and then she was at your ceremony.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Last two names. All right, the first one is Lieutenant Colonel Mike Spanky O'Dowd.
So Spanky, now Pastor O'Dowd, he flew my first combat mission into Afghanistan. And there was something just very calming about flying with Spanky. He would flown in Desert Storm, so like he had the credibility, had been there and done it. But he was just like this kind of a father figure in many ways for all of us. Like I remember, side story, I'll tell a little bit more here. But in addition to that first combat mission, the first time we were in Kuwait and a missile got launched from Iraq into Kuwait, we all thought it was chemical at the time. And, we're getting our chem gear on as fast as we can. And everybody's like, oh, this is real. Like it was a true eye-opening, like, oh, you remember that training that we all didn't want to do? And now everybody wants to get their gas mask on as fast as humanly possible. And, we're all standing around in our gas masks and like waiting for this missile to impact. We're like hunkered in these, like in our intel, area. And he's just going around and kind of patting everybody on the head, kind of looking us in the eyes. He can't talk very well in that gas mask, but he's just looking at us going, we're going to be okay. So that's what I remember about Spanky. And I recently just got to spend some time with him as well. It's fun to reconnect after all the years.
Kind of a unique story, and it seems fitting now just hearing what you said about him during that time frame, and then how he was so calm, and then he goes into to become a pastor.
Yeah, it's very fitting for him. Yeah, welcoming, and he just kind of knew how to take care of people, and just do it in a way that made you feel really comfortable.
That's awesome. The last name for this portion is Nancy Kennan.
My English teacher and speech and debate coach. Yeah, she if I were to pick words that come with her, is power women. And that's because during our speech and debate time, she just really pushed us to, think beyond what we thought we were capable of. And at the time, women were not allowed in combat. And, here I wanted to be this fighter pilot. And she signed my yearbook. The world needs changing, and it needs people like you go out and change the world, to a total power woman. But that's what she called us. She called us power women, and just really encouraged us to make a difference, and don't let no or rejection or failure stop you along the way.
Love it. I think you've referenced her in your book, and I think in a couple other like interviews and stuff. And I was actually I was going to reach out to her, and I couldn't get in contact, but I wanted to reach out to her because you've been on so many podcasts. So I was really determined not to try to ask you different questions. Still similar theme and stories, but what are the things that's not the same on that you talked about 100 times, and just to see more.
Oh gosh, she would have a lot of stories. So I'm pretty lucky you didn't
Yeah.
her. She was also our cheerleading coach. So that's one thing that probably people don't know about me.
Okay.
I was a cheerleader all throughout high school. So she was our cheerleading advisor and coach. And, I was a gymnast, so I had kind of that role. So there was a lot of things with cheerleading that I could do really well. And there was a lot of things that I couldn't do very well with all the dancers that were on the team. So she was always funny. She always just kind of put it in perspective for us and, keep us grounded in what we're good at and maybe what we need to work on.
So you were a cheerleader, and you also ran shoeless for a cross country meet. It's like
Yeah,
you're all over the place.
I was. I did a lot of sports was my thing. I played soccer, ran cross country and track, and what do, right? You're in a cross country race. Someone steps on the back of your shoe. Like I had this one moment of like, well, I could stop and put it on, but that'll take way too much time and huge pack of runners. It's going to be lost anyway. So I just went for it. Didn't turn out great in terms of my foot, but
it's a cool story. I mean, it's
it was a cool story to tell after the fact, but my foot suffered on that one.
Last couple of questions. If there was a giant billboard with your picture on it, and I feel like this really could happen, right? This is something, it's not too far fetched, but if there's a giant billboard with your picture on it for the world to see, what would you want that billboard to say, and where would you want that billboard to be?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say lead with courage, just because that's, a lot of what I've been talking about is, leading with courage. Where would I want it to be? Maybe outside of every middle school and high school, right? Like just that, just I think we got to catch kids early, and instill those good values. And I say that like, the reality is my kids listen to other people a lot more than they listen to us sometimes. But I just, I think it's a good message for all of us. But maybe if I were to pick anywhere, it would be outside of middle school and high school, maybe even elementary school,
That's really good.
Don't be afraid to go do something hard, right? Yeah. Don't be afraid to try out for the soccer team because you're worried if you're not going to make it. Like, go do it. Like, if it's what you want, put in the work and go do it.
Love that. I do have one bonus question.
All right.
And it's, what one piece of wisdom would you pass on to the next generation of people to help them light their own torch and carry it forward?
Yeah, so you get me with like one piece of advice. I mean, I have said it already, but I think I look at like, what would I go back to tell my younger self, and it's, don't be so hard on yourself. Give yourself some grace, because you are going to make mistakes. You are going to have failures along your journey. So do the work to make it happen. It's probably like 5 pieces of advice in one.
Oh, that's good.
That's how I skirt your question a little bit.
No, that's good. I really like that. So, especially just given, so there's a Post-it note that I have up on my computer desk, and it literally says, "Give yourself grace, Martin," because I don't give myself grace, and I beat myself up. So, and it's just, but just seeing that sometimes, like, we're doing better than I think we sometimes think we are.
Yeah. Life is hard. It doesn't always go the way you want. And as much as you work towards things, sometimes it still doesn't work out the way you planned. And give yourself some grace. What did you learn from it? What can you take away, and what can you do better the next time?
Last question. What can I do for you? How can I best serve you?
That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I love for people to learn more about my book, just because I think the messages are important. It's always been slightly awkward and uncomfortable for me to market the book, but
I'm gonna link it, and I'm gonna have
yeah,
and I took pictures of I have notes from the book, and I took
yeah.
pictures and all.
Oh, I
So I'm
love
gonna
that.
yeah, I'm gonna
Love
post that,
that.
and the link for the book on and most likely just be Amazon. And I'll have your website on there too. But I always link that stuff in the show notes.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
someone, someone said something to me like, the whole reason of writing a book is to share a message. And if you don't talk about the book, if you don't market the book, then people won't hear the message. And then what are they missing out on? What is that one person that said, because I read this one section or I heard this one thing, it changed me in this way. And that's just a reminder to me, it's, you got to be able to share the story and share the message, but it's the who can you help along the way on their journey and looking at that's really, I don't know why this is so hard to say, but looking at it from that perspective is what really helps me.
That's fantastic. Is there anything that you want to put out there, product wise, or anything that we didn't get a chance to discuss that you want to plug or promote?
No, I think we talked about enough. It's really just about, who can I help on their journey? What, from the lessons that I've learned, that was the point of writing the book is you take those key lessons. I look at some of the hardest things I've done and what can I pull from that to help others? And to me, that's really what it's about.
Do you have time for a few more lighter questions? I do
Yeah,
have these are
please.
totally. Have you seen the movie Captain Marvel? It
Yes.
came out with yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any like just talking to you and reading about you? Is there any? Have you ever thought about how Annette Bening's character? I think it was Annette Bening in that movie, right? She was like the mentor pilot to Brie Larson's character.
Oh yeah, you know names much better than I do on this one, but
But you know who I'm talking about. She
yeah.
was. Is there any chance that was loosely based on you, just her coolness? Because it's
Oh, totally. No. No.
yeah, and
No.
I love your call sign, Killer Chick.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. No, uh, if that movie is based on anybody, it's based on General Tally Levitt, Jeannie Levitt.
Okay.
She
Yeah.
did a lot of the work for that movie and helped, just get them smart on what we do.
If there were a movie made about your life, who would play you?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm so terrible at movie star
I'll make a
names.
recommendation.
Okay, great. That would work.
I've never seen what your husband looks like, so I'll just throw a name out there for actor, 'cause he's
Yeah.
got to be a part of it too, right? We'll say Ryan Gosling for him, and then I'll say Jennifer Lawrence for you. I don't know if that's
Yeah, that's great. But if you can work that out, we'll we'll get right on that.
yeah. Kim, KC, thank you so much for this. This absolutely means the world to me. I don't have it with me; it's in the other room, but there's this book. I've had people say you say every guest is in your top 150, because I wrote down, I've had my podcast for 8 years. I wrote down dream guest, but since my retirement, I've been making a point to I'm going to get all these people. So lately, it's every single person I've interviewed has been part of that list.
That's awesome.
But I've had this list for a long time,
Yeah.
and I like to write in pencil, and I write in cursive. So on that sheet of paper within that book, I always put a check mark after the episode, and it's so gratifying to finally have that check mark, because you're someone I look up to. You're someone as I was reading the book a couple months ago, I was telling my daughter, check this out, and she's 13, so just very pivotal age for a young girl. But just thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your poise. Thank you for being a killer chick.
Well, thanks for having me, and best of luck to you in this next chapter. I'm excited to see where it goes.